It's time to mind your business with me, Jamillah Lodge. Tune in to find out how to mind your business with BEDC, special guest entrepreneurs, industry experts, and more. Brought to you by BEDC. Bermuda Business starts here. Welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm your host, Jamillah Lodge. I am very excited to have in the room with me entrepreneur Ashley Fox and Rob Boyd, both of EMPIFY. So before we get started into the Q&A, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I will start with you, Ashley.
So I am from Philadelphia.
Okay.
Currently live in Atlanta. Went to Howard University to major in finance, and I never wanted to run a business. I always wanted to work on Wall Street.
Okay.
So graduated Howard, worked on Wall Street, and my job was to work with millionaires and billionaires. So we managed their assets. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot, but I felt like for something we're using every day, why isn't it taught in our school system? You shouldn't have to major in finance, work on Wall Street to get exposed to this information. So no, quitting my job with the intent to serve the 99% that Wall Street often overlooks. Mm-hmm. And so I created my company, EMPIFY, which is the word empower and modify merged together. And we are a fintech startup that's revolutionizing how adults and children learn how to build wealth.
Okay.
Fast forward to today, between losing everything, figuring life out, 10 years later, EMPIFY is an international company, a global brand that is financially empowering adults and children all over the world. We have our tech arm, the Wealth Builders Community, which is like the Netflix of finance. So adults from all over, including people from Bermuda, have access to financial tools and resources in the palm of their hand in a community-like environment. So I ended up becoming an entrepreneur because I wanted to change the world.
Okay.
And I ended up figuring out how to build a business that can be profitable, but could also impact change to help close the wealth gap.
I love that. That's what's up. So, Rob, tell us a little about you.
I'm from Durham, North Carolina.
Okay.
And also went to Howard University with Ashley, and now in Atlanta. And starting out, early in life, I was surrounded by a lot of, what we'll call chaos and mayhem in my neighborhood. And one of the things that I always felt was that I was different, and that I had a gift that I really couldn't understand and really didn't know how to explain. But I played sports growing up, playing basketball, and realized I was a leader in that space. I was always the captain of the teams, even if I wasn't always the best player. And I started to ask myself, why was I always, the leader of the team? And I realized that I just had this courageous gift to always try new things and try to be, the best. And I think that gift throughout life has just enabled me to get to a point now where I can help people with one of my gifts, which is also math and numbers. Okay. And understanding finance, and also understanding, how to move through life in a way where you might have had emotional challenges that have happened, losing, loved ones, losing, different things throughout the course of life. And so I think one of the best things that I could share, with people is a gift that, hey, here's something that you could use to improve your life. And that was one of the things that I always wanted to do, was help the people around me. It started out as teammates, and now as people, in everyday life, to say, hey, I can help you with your money, help you grow as a person. So that's what I would say I am at the core. And I just learned how to do that with finance.
So it's interesting that you say that. So you basically always were a leader, always had a desire to help people, and you also wanted to share your knowledge. Can you talk a little bit? Is that what drew you guys together? Like, how did you guys form this partnership?
You want to tell this story? So, Rob and I were at Howard, and Rob, I started to cheat off of Rob in econ because he was really smart.
Yeah.
And he was one of my smart friends. So while I was out partying, being cute with my girlfriends, me and Rob were like reading books, starting businesses, making money. But we always had a connection for something bigger outside of just the norm. And so when Rob had his job, Rob was about to quit his job when I was about to quit my job. So I was like, hey, Rob, let's just quit our jobs. And like, hey, let's go teach the world finance. And like, things just kind of, if you knew us back in college, it all makes sense. Okay. But in that moment in time, we didn't know what we were doing. We just knew what it felt like that we were chasing. Right. And so when we started to see the disconnect, and because we're complete opposites. Like, he's like really calm and like really smart. Like he operates like he reads encyclopedias all day. Like, and I'm like loud.
People are like,
crazy.
what's encyclopedia?
Right. But like, he just knows stuff, and I don't just know things. Yeah. I can learn things. Like, he can see things and just remember it. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, and so we're like complete opposites, but I think the intention on the world and what we want to give and the experience that we've had through our different careers and different lives, I think when it's all said and done, the destination to use our experience, to use our hearts, to use our mind, to financially change the world, we aligned. But I honestly cheated off of him in econ, and he just was like, cool.
But I think they say opposites attract, right? Like you need that balance. So you bring the here, he brings the here, and then you meet in the middle, and it works, right? You created this business, EMPIFY, which is designed to empower people who sometimes get left behind.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So you were on Wall Street, living your best life, making all the money, I'm sure. In terms of you deciding, okay, that's enough. I want to now show people how to do what I'm doing for other people. Like, talk a little bit more about that journey, because to me that's a selfless act, right? Because you're getting money, you're getting paid, so why stop that and take on the risk of building a whole new business that could potentially fail? And you mentioned some ups and downs, so I'm sure it wasn't all, beautiful. So can you talk a little bit about that and why it was so important?
So I didn't think I was building a business.
Okay.
I wanted to be like our billionaire clients.
Got you.
And they all created something.
Yes.
So I started to read the books they were reading. And I realized that even if I stayed at my high-paying job, if I stayed for 10 years, I would still not be qualified to be the clients that I served.
Right.
And so I realized they all created something or they invested in something. And I got to a space where I felt called to do something. So it was never, I'm going to quit my job, start a business. It was like, I'm going to leave. This program is over. I don't think I want to stay. This doesn't feel right. So I think around that time, I started to operate off of feeling versus logic.
Okay.
So I did what felt right. Now, what could happen as a result, I had no idea. I had no reference. Like, my parents were entrepreneurs.
Right.
All I knew, and I went to Howard, they didn't promote entrepreneurship in the School of Business. All I knew was Wall Street, corporate America. So I was actually confused, but I knew that I understood enough about Wall Street and money, and I knew that there's no one who could have that experience, have that passion to give it to the world the way I can. So I only knew who, and I knew why. I didn't know what or how.
Right.
I left Wall Street and created EMPIFY. Like, I remember I called you, like, I want to make the word up, and I want to, EMPIFY is empower and modify, merge together, because I wanted to give the world something they've never seen or felt before. So I wanted to create something that they have no preconceived perception of what it is. So everything just kind of gradually pieced itself together. But there was never, I'm going to be a billionaire, build this big old business. Like, I don't think I knew what business was. I made an LLC. Because I made up a word. EMPIFY didn't even make money until 3 years later.
Right.
So there was no intention. It was a feeling. And then, like, we randomly became financial. Rob called me and pretty much asked me to be a financial advisor. And I had all the licenses. And I knew enough about it. Then we had, like, an event, and, like, 100 people showed up. And they just thought we were smart. And we like, all right, that's how it worked.
Yeah.
So it started with us. We both were financial advisors. And that allowed us to know we could serve, but we couldn't massively impact. Because when you're an advisor, you work with individuals.
Exactly.
So, like, Rob had an office in D.C. I opened the office in Philly. And then we realized we didn't want, like, this. Rob actually left being a financial advisor before I did. And
I think what we learned was that with every person we were sitting down with, we were educating them. And then we would educate them to ultimately, make decisions about certain things they need to do in their finances. And then we just had this magical idea that this education process could be monetized. Like, this is what people actually need before you make a decision on a particular, financial product. So I think that was that transition period where we realized that we had the ability to teach money, because one thing is like, all right, I know how to give you the right products. But it's a whole different superpower to be able to teach someone how to make decisions with their money. And I think that's the thing that we learned we were good at naturally because of where our heart was. But also just, the scholastic things we learned. It's like, oh, wow, like, we actually can do this. But how are we going to do this?
We just figured it out.
We just knew the why.
I think it's interesting that you didn't initially start out with a desire to become an entrepreneur, and this is where you ended up.
It also wasn't sexy back in.
No,
back
it wasn't
then either.
It wasn't, right? Nobody was.
I don't think I knew that word meant when to be honest.
No, sexier was working on Wall Street, right?
Yeah, it was.
But what I think is important that I think is missed a lot of the times, especially in Black and brown communities, is the pathway to building wealth doesn't come from working for someone.
Well,
right? In most instances.
So yes and no. Cause
Okay.
being an entrepreneur, sometimes I wouldn't even encourage people to go through what I go through. You have to have something so much bigger than like, I'm in too deep now to even quit.
Right.
But it was something so much bigger than me that I had no plan B.
Right.
But I do believe you can build wealth having a job. That just cannot be the only way you make money.
Right.
So you can invest in other people's businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you can invest in your own business. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that not investing is going to help you build wealth.
Right.
Wealth meaning the financial ease and security, so that you don't ever have to depend on anyone for money, right?
Right.
So in this case, I believe that you can invest in yourself.
Right.
Start your own business. Or you can work in a business, but also invest in other business.
Right.
So, like, for example, someone could work at their own job and become an investor in EMPIFY.
Yeah.
And I believe that they'll be multimillionaires, right? Like, but they didn't have to start EMPIFY to do that.
Right.
So it's not meant for everybody to be an entrepreneur and even become a successful entrepreneur.
That is true.
And I think that takes a different type of mental fortitude that not every, like, I've been kicked out of places, moved back, like, I don't have any children, like, everybody's life is different, but you can invest in the stock market. You can invest in other people's businesses that allow you to make money as a result of somebody else's idea.
Right.
So I do believe you can be employed. It just cannot be the only
source of income.
reason that you're looking to make money.
What she said.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you can do both. But I think we live in this world where entrepreneurship is so sexy, but nobody knows
the hustle, the grind,
like what you really have to go through, and it's more mental than anything.
Yeah.
So I think letting people realize that, and and again, you can try it, but for me, like, I want to go big. It was never, let me start something because I don't want a job. It's like, no, I want to impact the entire world, and I'm not stopping until I do it. So no matter how big we get, we got to be bigger because we have to serve billions of people. But that was the goal, not let me start a business.
Right.
Because I just want money. So.
And most people that I've had conversations with, that's not why they start. It's not people who are truly passionate are successful. They started because they want to affect change, right? They want to do something impactful, and that's the thing that keeps driving them forward when you face challenges.
Correct.
You mentioned challenges and the ups and downs. Can you share some of the things that you went through as you were building?
He sees things through a different lens, so he could give you something.
Okay.
I mean, well, as far as challenges, I think the biggest thing that I faced was when I started to think about going out on my own and doing things more entrepreneurially.
Yes.
Before there was a formal business, I think the thing was how I started to think about how my heart was going to have an imprint on the world. When for so much of my life I was guarding my heart, and I was especially coming up in Black and brown communities. There's a lot of things that are painful in that experience.
Yes.
Whether it's being without, whether it's losing friends, family members. For different reasons. And so throughout, the majority of my life, I had to guard my heart because I had to, have the shield up. But then I realized, well, the thing that will probably free me in life is going to be, allowing myself to act in a way that was, in line with my passion to help people and lead people. And so throughout this process of like what the hard parts were, I think the hardest part was the mental thing.
Okay.
Say, money comes and goes. And that is made to continue to circulate and flow. But the biggest thing I had to go over is like this mental hurdle. And so I think one of the
when you talk about the mental hurdle, can you define, like, what do you mean when you say that?
Having, recreating your value system.
Okay.
And that's a mental project. Your heart is your heart.
Right.
So the way you feel about certain things, what you want to help people do, is usually consistent over time. But the hard part is like, how do I, think about myself differently, be more confident about, the things I want to do.
Yep.
And, when I have those moments where my confidence is sputtering and I might not believe in myself and I might, take a couple steps back, The question is how you're going to respond to that. And those are like the mental parts of the process. And I think once you figure that part out, a lot of other things fall into place over time. But those, mental hurdles show up in different ways for different people. But for me, it was, at that moment, we're leaving the job and we were, figuring things out, running our own offices. And I had, these thoughts where it's like, I feel like I'm headed in the right direction,
but I know,
but I don't. But
this
doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
it's like, and I was like, I did this for a reason, but that opportunity wasn't it. And that played a role because I thought, taking that step and leaving the job, I thought that was the win. I was like, oh, I won the game. I left. I quit. It's like, oh,
now
no.
what? Yeah, now.
No, this doesn't. But in this first experience, I didn't feel like I was winning. And I love to win.
Right.
And I think that came from sports. And so that's like it was a mental hurdle. It was like, well, I got to recalibrate. Like what's really important to me? How do I keep my confidence and not let my mind play tricks on my heart?
Right.
And that was the hard part. That was the transition.
Okay.
And that's it's difficult.
Was it the same for you, Ashley?
It was. It's just it gets a little different when you have to you have a staff. Because if you don't have that confidence, there are people depending on you. So there have been times where you think money's going to come in, it doesn't come in. There have been times you got to make payroll and you realize that everybody has to get paid and you don't get paid. So I think it is all mental because you don't know what you're doing. So there's nothing the only thing at this point we hold on to is past performance. But in entrepreneurship, if you've never been an entrepreneur, you can't bank on your success because you have nothing to reference.
Right.
I mean, 10 years of leaving my job, I got a good resume now.
Yeah,
but,
now you...
but I had to believe in the idea of what 10 years of leaving her job, what that actually looked like. And so now I look at who I am and I've dreamt of being her. But what's interesting is now that I am her, I feel like I just got started.
Right.
So
much more. Yeah.
So I think it's the evolution of you. I definitely encourage people to get some sort of, whether it's some sort of spiritual connection, therapist, because you got to be the best you every day, but you have no real blueprint to follow because you have no reference point, and your mind has no reference point to connect. This is a familiar space, from the first time you hire your first employee or you get your first office or you get your first client or that new client. You really don't know what you're doing. You're only banking off the belief that you've got something, and the world needs it, but the world doesn't even know you exist. So how do I show the world you need EMPIFY, and we've got you, and handle what comes with that. And because you have no reference point, it's not like you have a job and you're giving your
manual, step by step.
We have to create those every step of the way we want it done.
Right.
Like we were talking about now training people to operate in the EMPIFY tone. And it's like, well, we don't even know what to reference because we created this tone that we want to give to the world that we know works. But what does it mean?
Right.
But it's like, hey, if you created this word EMPIFY, you created it, so you have to create the entire infrastructure of it. So there's no rule book, there's no reference. And because there's nothing to reference, you have no past
barriers. There's nothing to hold you down.
But it depends on how you look at it. You can look at yourself like you're invincible and you have freedom.
Yes.
Or you can look at yourself like, what if this isn't right?
Yeah.
Like what if this game plan I'm building isn't the right game plan? And I have no reference point psychologically to say it's right or wrong. So literally every day you wake up and you try it out, and whatever works, it works, and whatever doesn't, you got to change it. So and then you just get to this point, you just solve problems all day long.
Yeah.
To
me, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's like you are the problem solvers. You're fixing it. You're like, you saw a problem. People are not understanding or they don't know how to build wealth. I do. They do, the people that I'm working for. So how do I fill that gap? And so I really believe, maybe I'm like a glass half full person all the time. So I'm like, but that means you have no constraints.
Some days I'm not. I'm glass half empty. And that's what he's talking about. Like, you really have to think about what you're thinking about as you're building a business. Yeah. Because if you're not consciously aware of who you are and your capabilities, you can talk yourself out of your own greatness, especially when you don't even know. Like, sometimes I walk into the office and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but every day I got to show up. There's a world, there's my following, there's my team. And it's like, I'm going to just wing this. And it's like...
You know what, Ashley? You are not winging nothing. I'm going to give you your flowers because I hear what you're saying. But yes, you have moments of doubt, right? Yes, you're like, oh, God.
Right.
But you know what you're doing. Like, you built this business based off of something that you felt that you knew. And no, there was no blueprint. Great.
But no comes from your mind.
Exactly.
I lead with my heart.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's a different, I know here is where the convincing needs to happen.
Yes, that's true.
And
That is true.
That's the process.
That is
I know here. I left with here.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, it's like, you really want to leave?
You'd be like,
Here
you crazy.
says,
Yeah.
Right.
So knowing that here has worked for me all these years, I'm gonna just operate off
You
of
gotta
here.
trust that,
But
yeah.
I can't help that this still exists.
It does.
If I could turn my mind off, I'd be great.
But like she said, I think if we had to sum it all up,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is going from being confident in what you've done to being confident in who you are.
Right.
And what you haven't done, right?
Right,
Because
right,
you got to
right.
write that rule book.
'Cause
You
Who you are is going to be the person that changes the world.
Yeah.
What we did 10 years ago, what we did in college, does not certify our success in entrepreneurship.
Right.
You are so right.
Like, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, I just got to be confident that who I am showing up is going to change the world. And if I can base my confidence in that rather than my resume,
Yeah.
then that's the person, no matter what you apply that to. You could, make car parts. You could, create financial education.
You make a great point, because I think, like, now you said entrepreneurship wasn't sexy back in the day. You know, you had to go to university. You had to get your degree because you had this pathway laid for you. Whereas now you're seeing people, they don't have no university degree. They don't have any. And
you don't need
you
it.
don't need it.
You don't.
You don't need
I think
it.
with
I mean, it
ther-
helps.
I think
'cause
a therapy,
yeah.
therapy, a good environment, and some good books will lead you through.
And you straight.
I've accepted,
true.
but Howard got me to Wall Street.
Okay.
Wall Street got me the exposure,
Yes.
and it got me the belief. So now I take what I saw. You can't tell me I can't be a billionaire
Yeah.
when I've been in their homes.
Yeah.
I've seen their bank accounts. I met their kids. So my level of belief comes from my exposure.
Yeah.
I now know I have to take my belief and give it to people who have never seen
Seen
what
that.
I've seen. And that's all that I can count on.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what I'm holding on to. You can't tell me I can't do this because I saw this.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to believe, but I can't lose that. And I think, sometimes I think about, like, I majored in business.
Yeah.
I worked in finance. No, there was no class that I was taught to prepare me for who I am today.
Right.
But to become who I am today, I had to go to Wall Street.
To
So
go
I
through
needed
yeah.
college.
Yeah.
I needed Wall
Yeah.
Street. I needed all of that information to be able to stand here and say, I can do this for you because of what I got exposed to. So college worked out for me,
Yes.
but I didn't go there to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I went there to be on Wall Street. So there's definitely things that college can teach you. But at this day and age, sometimes you have to judge what is your return on investment because college is expensive.
Yes,
And it's
it
like,
is.
while you can make millions of dollars on the internet, that doesn't mean that college isn't valuable because it doesn't have a direct monetary gain.
Right.
Sometimes it's the intangibles that college gives you when you maximize
Yeah.
it.
Very true.
So
Yeah.
it's not that it's not helpful, but I don't believe any book can prepare you for entrepreneurship.
No, I don't. I agree. I mean, no, we teach entrepreneurship, but yeah.
But
But you
again,
are
can,
absolutely right.
anybody can read the book.
Yes.
Multiple people can read the book. But that doesn't mean you can play the game
Right.
and win at the game.
That's right. It's
So-
about implementation, right? Like, even with the rocket pitch competition, which you guys participated in as judges, that's the thing. You can have an idea, you can pitch the idea, but it's nothing if you don't implement the idea.
right.
And then it's also how you implement it, right? It's how much time are you willing to dedicate? How much are you willing to sacrifice to see this thing through? And so one of the things that I think I'm hearing from you both is a theme. You know, what the other presenter, Ephraim, talked about doing the impossible. Like, people always talk, it's impossible for you to do this. You can't go to the NFL. It's impossible for you to be a writer. What do you know about it? And he was like, yeah, whatever. I believe in myself. And that's what I hear you guys saying. You believed, you saw when you were in those billionaires' houses what it could be. So how you going to tell me I can't do it? Of course I can do it. Now I just got to figure out how.
Right.
So now that we're talking about the how, talk to me a little bit about what EMPIFY does and how you reach these billions and millions of people all around the world.
Tell him. Rob's brain as our lead financial educator who just channels great quality information in an easy and digestible way.
I think it's really just taking people's story and stories and like we all live life, right? We all are qualified to talk about life. And once you can take, how we live life and things we've seen and say, hey, here's what you may have been exposed to or what you may know through, just fumbling through life, if you will. And say, but here's the financial information that can kind of change how you're traveling through life. And you can say, hey, here's how you apply this information to your story. That's what we do. We take financial information, the stuff we've learned in college, in our professional lives, and say, hey, we know how this information can be applied to your life. And we know for a fact that no matter what your life path is, we know a way to start to apply this to your life that is going to improve you financially and for generations to come. And we just got great at knowing people, because we all are people, and say, hey, instead of trying to teach at people, we're going to help them use this information and apply it to wherever they are in their financial story.
Okay.
And that's where we thought, like, okay, the information is cool, but the information is not powerful.
That's the easy part.
Information is...
I mean, you could Google everything we teach.
The information is the information.
You can't Google how we teach it.
Right, and it's like, okay, well, in order to know how to teach it, you have to understand people. And in understanding people, you have to start to work on understanding yourself.
Right.
And that's that mental work. To say, okay, once we both went through a lot of our own trials and learned more about ourselves and how certain instances felt, how certain various experiences felt. So, all right, let's make sure when we teach this information, we teach it from a place where it's understandable and applicable, because we know where people are coming from, because we felt every moment, from points where we get kicked out of apartments to scenarios where I don't have what I need to have to make the next decision in life, and you feel that.
Yeah, you
it's
do.
like I feel less than. I feel like I made a mistake. And when you know how that feels, then you know how to deliver the information in a way that someone feels empowered to use it, instead of feeling as though this information is above me.
Yeah.
And that's what we got great at.
Okay, I see you. And you can't really replicate that. Like, that to me is part of the authenticity that I think people will respond to, right?
I always say things are not taught, they're caught.
Yeah.
Most people in finance, want to make money, and rightfully so.
Right.
But you can't lead with that, because people could feel that. And the most money you can make in finance typically don't come from the people who have the most money. So it was more of, how can I serve an audience of people who can't get this information, can't receive this information, and feel like they don't belong a part of this information. And for me, it didn't start out with making money. It was serving the people that Wall Street couldn't talk to, because I understood them.
Right.
And I think once you understand, like Rob said, how people feel, what they're afraid of, you can do the complete opposite. So while we know it's big words and big numbers, well, let's break it down into something that you know.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to, because finance is a business. We thrive off of education. So the better our education, the bigger our business. Versus a bank, the more products they give you, the bigger their business. There's no need to educate you, because we have the great products, right? And that's fine. So how do we learn to coexist in a world where we make something that banks need, because they need you as their customer? We understand the financial organizations and how the banking system works, but we also understand the people and the disconnect to the financial institutions. So we have a very unique perspective, because we know what it looks like to truly build wealth in this world, but also understand what it's like to be teaching financial education in the public school system or the prison system. So there's really no aspect of money we haven't seen. So we take all of that exposure and turn it into something that meets the person where they are, to bring them to where they need to be. So I think you can't take that. You can't take us being able to work with the wealthiest people in the world, but then to work with the poorest school in the neighborhood, and still make it work so much that the school wants us to come back. So, and also because we also teach a very universal topic. So the color of wealth, it doesn't have a color.
Right.
It looks like all of us. And once you get people to believe that, they'll be ready to receive anything. And that's a mental barrier that needs to be broken, not a financial barrier. Because you could give people millions of dollars. In America, they gave out trillions of dollars in stimulus checks, and the wealth gap got bigger.
Right.
How did it get bigger and you gave out free money? It's because giving money is not going to solve the problem. It's changing the mindset. So if we target the mindset, the money will come.
Right.
And again, I've been doing this for 10 years. So like, I've tried so many different things, and now it's being able to scale what we know works. and build an infrastructure. Another thing they didn't teach me in school. So I can see it. I can see it. I know it works. We know how to make money. People want us. How do you make it bigger?
Right.
You know, having something that works, that's profitable, and then saying, let's go reach 100 million people in 1 year. How do you do that? You know, so that's different. So I think we have a very unique approach that started here, where most financial organizations and people and companies start here.
Right.
And you can win in America with this, especially if you understand the minds of people.
Right.
But you can change the world when you understand the hearts of people, and that's kind of how we lead.
Oh, I love that. I'm getting all the warm fuzzies. 30 minutes went fast, right? It goes fast. Like, I have all these questions, and I'm like, hold on. But the good thing is that we will have an opportunity to continue the discussion because you're here for Global Entrepreneurship Week. We have another conference. You at the men's conference. You at the women's conference. So I'm super excited to see what you guys present. We have more time to discuss. But before we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity to share, like, what was the biggest or most exciting thing that happened for EMPIFY that you were just like, we did that?
What would you say?
I think for me, I think the most exciting thing was seeing something that we launched digitally come to life in person.
Okay.
And doing our first large event this past summer, you saw the impact in person. And it's one thing to see, you know, people post things in our app and like, I did this, I did that. But then, like, being in person and just person after person after person coming to me, telling me, like, these stories, like, Rob, when you said this, when Ashley said that. And I'm like, this is really real. And I think that was the point where the light bulb really went off. Because, of course, we wouldn't have gotten here if it didn't already somewhat get turned on.
Right.
It was just kind of dim. But now it's really bright because you see that how this impacts people's lives.
Yeah.
And the two parts of the word empower and modify, you see it happening in color, in person, and hear all these stories. And I think for me, that was the moment where I'm like, wow, this was, 100 people in this room. And then ultimately, there's going to be 100,000 people in a room, in a stadium, in an arena.
Wait till y'all get there.
And so I think that was like the most recent but big thing, because there was so many things.
Yeah.
I think seeing that, that was for me like, okay, this.
We doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, what about for you, Ashley?
Other than that, I think is when we became a 7-figure business.
Okay.
You spend your whole life like, I want to make $1 million, like, and to know like just what we've mentally and financially went through, to see it actually happen, it felt normal. And I think I had to become someone who believed that we could be a $1 million business.
Yeah.
And I think for so many years and doubts of not being able to make payroll and leading with what if this goes wrong or we can't afford this, the moment those stories I started to let go of those stories, money started to come. But the cool part about it is, and I've heard this on plenty of panels and books, but when you cross $1 million, it seems so small.
Yeah.
But you now know you can make millions and millions of dollars. So that idea of EMPIFY becoming a $1 billion business, it's like so much clearer because I've seen what we have become, and it's like I'm willing to go through way more to get to that point. And I think for me particular, specifically in the Black community, just being a Black woman, building a $1 billion business, but not doing it through entertainment or television, but using the intellect of a topic that the world never truly understood, that matters more to me. The money is the money. Like, after a while, you have money, you buy nice things, that's fine. But it's more about what it represents to the world that we serve. Because if you can see that happen and evolve, it makes the world believe that we can build businesses, we can build wealth. But we build wealth by teaching the world how to build wealth.
Yeah.
So once that threshold crossed, it kind of was like, how many millions does it take to get to $1 billion?
Yeah.
And it's like, if we did 1, 2, 3, we can do 100 and we can build something. And I feel like I just got started. I feel like we just had our conference.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, we got over 2,000 people in this app. And it's like, well, we know we did to get 2,000, but it's like, We just got to do that about 10 more times
Yeah.
to get, thousands and thousands of people. And because we have a subscription-based business, we have a membership app, people stay. And one thing about like Netflix will consistently be a big old billion-dollar business because you keep your subscription. So as long as we keep the building and we keep the growth, the subscriptions come. And now we can cultivate an environment, cultivate an energy, cultivate a business that people can't live without this.
Right.
So whether we're physically here or not, we're creating something that the world can't live without. And that business will always thrive because they always feel like there's value that's being given. And as a company and its valuation, well, it's a lot harder to run a subscription business because you technically run two businesses, the inside and the out, but it makes us that much more powerful and valuable. But if the world can keep a Netflix subscription to keep them entertained, which is not building wealth.
Right. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
How can we build something that is just as sticky as a Netflix, but way more impactful than your college education?
Love that.
So for me, I think the belief is just, it's still crazy because you got to be crazy to run a business. Like you really have to be like insanely crazy.
Yeah.
But the more successful you become and the more lives that are changed and the more accolades you receive, it just adds to your belief system. Even when you thought you didn't have it, something happens to remind you you've been this far, you could keep going.
Yeah.
But once you cross that threshold of making 7 figures, it's literally like, I can do this 100 times more, but my confidence just got way bigger. So
I love that. You guys are awesome. I love what you're doing. I can't wait for more people to hear what you're doing. I'm sure that your time here, like you said, you already have people who are part of your community in Bermuda. Yeah. So the opportunity to expand that community presents itself. But yeah, I love hearing what you're doing because we need it, right? We need to be part of that building wealth conversation. And I think what you're doing, what you're bringing forward will allow people to do that. So I want to thank you both for spending some time with me, sharing some of your views about EMPIFY, and I look forward to hearing more when we have the conferences. And then I think that's it. Yeah. We minded some business today, and I just want to remind the listeners, if you don't mind your business, who will?
Yeah. EMPIFY.com, EMPIFY. Social media, _ Ashley and Fox.
_ Rob Boyd.
Yeah.
The Rob Boyd.
The Rob Boyd.
Got you. Okay.
Wealth Builders community. We got about 12 people from Bermuda inside of our app, and they're growing and they're building and they're investing. So no matter where you are in the world, you can learn. And we've got people from Bermuda, from all over the world, learning how to invest and build wealth, and starting with what they have. You don't have to have a lot to build big, but you got to be consistent to always build.
Okay, love that. Thank you guys again for coming and spending some time with us. Thanks for tuning in to Mind Your Business with me, your host, Jamillah Lodge. Tune in next week, Thursday at 4 p.m. because if you don't mind your business, who will? Mind Your Business is brought to you by BEDC. Bermuda Business starts here.